welcome to the Creatives Get Real podcast. I'm Roben-Marie Smith.
And I'm Sandi Keene, and these are two artists having real conversations around art tables.
How's it going, Sandi?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So this week we decided to pull one from the archives, one that we feel is a real important one, and it deals with the idea of your limits on sharing on social media, that, your limits on personal information versus, how much should you share and how do you determine that and how do you make that decision? It's episode 10. So it was a while back we first started. Yeah, it was called The Box of Transparency, which Sandi coined, I think is fabulous. And tell us a little bit about it, and then we will lead into that podcast. So we really hope that you'll re-listen to it. If you haven't already heard it, then we really hope that it will be of benefit to you.
Yeah, this is one that I send to my coaching clients and ask them to listen to because it's a question that comes up all the time. What do I share on social media? What do I talk about? I don't know. I have, like you often say that you think your life is boring, because you don't have kids, you don't have pets, and what the heck do you talk about?
Right.
Though everyone is screaming, listening to this, going, I can think of 15 things I would ask you. So
please ask me so that I can add it to a list and know what to talk about. No, I'm just kidding. But you're right, though. Yeah. But you're right, though. It's hard for us to determine because there's so much noise out there. You've got people on one extreme that are like sharing way too much. And then you have others that share nothing, so how do you, find what is right for you? And I think that's what's really important is what's right for you.
It is. Yeah, every person's answer is individual to them.
Right.
And there are people that are wide open, they're like, they'll talk about anything. And then there's people like me who are not that way at all. I'm more guarded. A lot of things in my life I'm not bringing up, on my podcast or in my feed or on social media. That's just not who I am. So the episode is all about making that decision before you get into the crisis, which you've talked about a lot when you guys counsel teens.
Yes.
Like make your decision before you're in the situation.
You already know what you're going to do and how you're going to respond before you face that situation. That way, there's no question, there's no doubting, there's no there's no peer pressure. It's just I've made that decision ahead of time, and now things will be much easier.
Right. And you're so right. And it's exact same thing for adults. So the box of transparency is a theory all about what are the things in your box, and that box are the things that you're going to be the most transparent about. That people can ask you anything about certain topics, like your art journey, your art room, your storage systems, the supplies that you use, the techniques that you use. Maybe it's where you vacation, your favorite foods, those kind of things. But then outside the box are the things that you're never going to talk about. So name 3 things that you're never going to talk about on social media, please.
Oh, right now?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm throwing this right at you.
Let's see. Okay. My sex life, that would probably be one.
Yep.
I think that I would probably stay away from like financial things, like things about my life and my financial situation. I know there's businesses and people out there who do. A third one.
How about your marriage?
Yeah, I guess that would be, I was thinking, but I would not. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're not coming on and say, I painted this after my husband and I had a knockdown drag out. I'm really, really mad at him, and I'm not speaking.
No, absolutely not. No, no.
Yeah. And if, I have adult children, I do not mention and talk about their lives at all. If I had grandchildren, which I don't, but if I did, then, there's things about my grandkids I would love to share if I had them. But then there's other things that I would respect their privacy. So, it's deciding beforehand where is that line.
And this is something too that, there may be listeners who are going, well, I don't have any problem talking about that. That's your box of transparency.
Right.
That's why it's very individual for everyone. And you have to decide, what, and I think too, I know we'll talk about this in the episode, but I think there's a really big difference in the boxes of transparency of those that are younger and those that are in our age bracket.
Agreed.
It's just a very different world, and our worldview and what we've grown up with has been very different than what the teens that I work with. They only know this. They only know everything is out there, and they don't have any problem with that. And so that said is that, depending on where you are, your box is going to look a little different, and that's okay. We're just sharing with you how we see it, and it's an individual thing for everyone. And so when you've determined that and you have that comfort level, then you can move forward and be confident and comfortable with what you've decided. And then you'll know, is that shared or is that not shared? It's a super easy decision when you've come up to that. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
So enjoy the episode. It's one that we really liked, and we hope that you'll enjoy it too.
Yes. Enjoy. All right.
So this week we're talking about how to share online. This is a question you and I both get a lot when people are trying to build an audience, which is the thing that it seems like most people are needing help with.
Yes.
They are very confused about, what do I share online?
And what don't I share online?
Which is just as important.
That's right. What should I not share?
Right. So through my coaching, I've come up with this theory, and it's called the box of transparency. That sounds interesting, doesn't it? So what this is I have my clients create a box, and I think that you should actually do this. Draw a rectangle on a piece of paper, and you take topics that you are willing to be completely transparent about, and you write those topics and put them inside this box. And then you also decide what you will never discuss online, and you put those outside the box. Then you've already defined what it is you're going to talk about and what you're not, so that you're not making that decision on the fly.
And emotionally, and in the moment, making that decision. Yeah.
So let's talk about what might be in the box and what might be out of the box, knowing full well it's going to be completely different for every person.
That's right. Yeah. And, Sandy and I are of a different generation than those that are in their 20s and their 30s.
Right.
We grew up with social media.
Right.
We grew up with the internet and really don't know any different. They don't know a life before all of that.
Their life is on the
It is
internet.
that. It's all that. That's right. And so prospectively, they see things a little bit differently than we do.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. But I think it's important, absolutely important, to consider that. Much like telling or in mentoring teenagers for many years, my husband and I, we would always say to them, you need to have the decision made before you get yourself into a situation.
Yeah.
You need to already have that decision made. What are you going to say? What are you going to do? How are you going to react? So that you're not making it in the moment emotionally or by peer pressure or whatever that looks like, out of emotion. And so same thing applies to this.
It does.
And I never really thought about it that way. I never, back in the day started this thing called blogging and this internet thing. I was just like, I knew I wanted it. I didn't really know what I was going to do with it. I just wanted it. And so now, I really do think a lot more about that, about what goes. And there's times when I reach for my phone in that moment of frustration of like, ugh, and I want to just type something on Twitter. And I'm like, no, don't go there.
Right.
So let's talk about that, how you would guide somebody in that first step. Obviously, get the piece of paper out with lots of colored markers and maybe some stickers.
Oh, yeah.
And start working on that. That's right. Because we not only have our business, if we're in business, or our art, or that part of us that we want to share, and we are predominantly talking to artists or creatives, but we also have our personal life as well. So what's the first step after we get that box drawn?
It is starting to take topics and figure out where they go, in the box, out of the box. Okay. Because it is important when you're trying to develop an online personality and you want people to get to know you, you do have to share.
That's right.
And you have to share, I think, with transparency. But you get to decide what topics you're transparent about and what you're not. Right. For example, I don't share things about my marriage. Been married for a very, very, very long time. It's a big, big number. But I don't bring my husband into conversation other than to mention, like we did on a recent podcast, that he's an engineer,
right,
and that he likes numbers. But I wouldn't talk about, for me, and I will admit right here, I think I have an admission on every podcast. It's like my thing now.
Yeah.
I will admit that I am a guarded person. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm not a person that gives away a lot until we're close.
Yeah.
So my box of transparency probably has fewer things in it than other people. In fact, I know it does.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm not going to bring my marriage. I'm not going to talk about my children who are adults. I'm not going to talk about them, on social media.
Right.
Those kind of things. What I am going to talk about is art. What makes me happy in art, products, techniques, frustrations, successes.
Right.
All of those kind of things. People I admire.
And isn't that just the nature of really the audience that you are reaching? You're not a lifestyle blogger. You're not a travel writer who is, sharing adventures with your spouse, traveling around the world or whatever. But again, I still think it comes down to, and we've talked about this, where there's the fine line between really personal information and, sharing that it's my anniversary and we're heading to the beach or whatever.
Right.
And a little maybe nugget about us.
Yeah.
That's a lot different than my husband and I just got into this argument and then, backlashing him or whatever online. There's a difference there.
Yeah.
Those are things that, at least both of us agree should remain in outside the box.
For us.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I also think it's important when you start thinking about an online personality, how much do you want to bring outside of art in? Because that can be confusing.
Yes. Because you want to be authentic and you want people to feel like they know you.
Right.
Because obviously the journey here is, especially if you're in business, is they need to get to know you before they decide they like you and then trust you and then perhaps spend some money with you or
take a class
or that kind of thing, or just be a follower, somebody who enjoys your blog articles or your art. So there is a process. And so how do you walk that line between, I want people to get to know me, the real me, not just some made up thing, but then also still remain private in the things that need to remain private for you. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that it is difficult at times to make that decision. And I also want to talk more about confusing people. So if you're an artist and then your feed, for me, I don't enjoy this. If I'm following an artist and then their feed becomes filled with recipes, that's not why I'm there.
Exactly.
I don't mind an occasional recipe, sure. Or you talking about what you read that was, really inspiring. I want to know that. But I don't want, the focus to be changing or like diluted.
Right.
Where I'm kind of not sure who you are anymore. So I think that's important to talk about as well.
Right.
What do you think?
Oh, I totally agree. And I think for something like that, if you were to want to change direction, you could certainly allude to that and let people know. But or, all of a sudden this artist that you love and you follow, everything on their feed is now all their cat pictures, something like that. It is confusing. And then you're not really sure, well, have they changed their interests, and maybe they're really not the person, for me now to follow.
Right.
I also feel for me, and I mean, we're just kind of being real here, is I tend to also, when, you read the captions and you read the words, those are important to me too. And if I start seeing too many things that are controversial, whether it's politics or religion or, it could be anything in relation to all of that. And it becomes a bit extreme.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that people have their viewpoints and they have their opinions about things,
Right.
but I don't really go there to read that. I want to be inspired and I want to be encouraged, and I want to provide the same thing to those that follow me. I think somebody who follows me would be very shocked if I suddenly put a post up that was just, I don't know, just completely out there. It would be very uncharacteristic. But I also know from, us having this conversation, there are just things that I might feel a certain way about something, but it's just not something I'm going to share on social media.
Right.
I'm just going to stay away from that. Doesn't make me any less authentic, but I know my audience too, and I know what I'm comfortable with.
Right.
And I have to be true to myself in that. But I know that there'll be others who will say, well, aren't you not being true to yourself if you don't put it all out there? So I hear the other side of it. That's why you have to make that decision for yourself.
Right. I agree. And make it ahead of time.
Exactly.
So that it's done. So it's not an election year and you're trying to decide whether or not you're going to come out and support or bash
exactly.
a candidate. Is that something that you're going to do? Or let's say that there's a cause that's close to your heart. Are you going to discuss that in an art setting? Or if that's really important to you, do you start another Instagram or social media account that deals with that exclusively?
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I have an example of that, actually. My heart is in mission work and going to Honduras in the summer. And I pretty much think anyone who's been following me for a while knows that's important to me. I've talked about it. I share photos. I don't turn my whole feed into my trip to Honduras, but I definitely include, because my followers and those that know me, they know I'm there. They expect it. They want to know how it went. They're like on that journey with me because they know it's important to me and it's close to my heart. And I'm okay doing a blog post with a recap and sharing how that trip went for me and what it meant to the people. I don't turn my whole blog into a blog about Honduras, but that is very important to me. And so I want to share that with my readers and followers because they know that gives them a little bit of a glimpse into me as a person. Right. So, so that's an example of that. But I agree. If I wanted to start a completely new Instagram account that only dealt with stories from Honduras or the people or whatever, I would absolutely consider doing that before I would fill my own art feed with that. That would be very confusing. For sure. Yeah.
Well, you've actually been in this experience because you do have two Instagram accounts.
Yes.
And you had to divide. So talk a little bit about that decision.
Yeah, that took me a while because first of all, running two accounts is it's a lot of work actually. And so with my new membership, Makers Tech U, where I'm predominantly teaching the tech side of everything, websites, Instagram, all of that, because as artists and creatives, we tend to not always be great at the left brain side of things. And fortunately, I kind of excel at both. Or where I lack in one, I make up in the other, I always like to say. So I decided to start the second Instagram account because there were a lot of things I wanted to post about that related to the techie part, even though it was still related to art. But I knew that my art audience, some would love it because they want that, but not as a whole. And so some things cross over. I still show a little bit of art in the Makers Tech feed, or I think it's Tech Savvy Artist is the Instagram feed. And I'll give tips and tech tips, but I still keep it artsy and pretty because it's still reflective of me as an artist. But I don't put as much in my art feed as it's like, oh, I want to share that tip. Maybe I need to put that over in the other feed, in the other Instagram account. So that's why I ended up starting two.
And I follow several people who have done the exact same thing, where they're an artist or a creative, and then they have another thing that they're really, whether it's wellness or cooking or whatever it is.
Or it could be product-based. Maybe they have a product that would lend itself well to a feed, how to use or whatever, and then it makes sense. And there can be a little crossover there, of course, but
there should be, actually.
Yeah, because you're still that person. You're still part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you want that account associated with both of you.
Absolutely.
Both sides of you. Yeah. So I think it is important to, decide whether or not, is this a new account or is this belong in this account?
Right. But if you've done your box ahead of time,
you'll have a good idea.
Right. Yeah. So what are some things, I'm assuming we're going to share some things that are in our boxes and things that aren't. I think we've already touched a little bit on some of those things that we...
Yeah, I've talked about mine. Yeah. So you go first.
Yeah, I definitely my art, definitely techniques, ideas, things like that. I mean, I feel like I try to have the audience in mind. You know, who am I talking to? I think that's really important. Who am I talking to? You know, my blog is not necessarily set up for only my family. Neither is my Instagram feed. You know, I do have my Facebook page. I don't know. You get confused anymore. They change so often. You used to just have Facebook and then everybody followed you. And then they changed it. And then now you have a page. So I moved them and I separated them out. So now my Facebook is just for, you know, friends and family. I don't post anything art or business on that one. And then I just have my page. But I like to think that I am okay with a little bit of personal. Like I've shared openly over the last several years my deal with depression and anxiety. But when I was dealing with it at the time, this was 12 years ago, I didn't talk about it at all. And I think a lot of it was that dealing with it, I was scared. I didn't want to come across as being out of control or being weak or there's something wrong. I mean, I wasn't thinking rationally anyway, because that's the circumstances that I was in, but I'm open about it now and I'm okay. However, we were just talking about this. I probably would not get online and just rant about this horrible, horrible day I had and all these things that went wrong and my husband didn't understand me and, you know, whatever that looks. To me, it's not positive. And I want my audience to be inspired and uplifted. Doesn't mean that my life is perfect or that everything is great, because it's not.
Right.
Although we're real. I do have a great life. I'm very happy, but you're right. Things go wrong, stuff happens, but there's just that fine line between, I'm not going to put that out there.
Right.
And I'm not, I know that we were just talking about this too, about, personal finances and things like that. I don't feel comfortable with that either. I don't have children, so I can't really speak for the amount that you would share, online. I mean, I think someone who has small children, that's a different whole ball of wax, I think, than having older grown children. But yeah, and I would not share just dealings with family and friends if there were some controversies or there were major issues, or I don't know. I just don't feel like that's something I want to put out there.
Yeah, that gets into trust issues. Like, can I trust you with my information? Or
exactly.
Or is what I come to you to talk about going to end up on your feed?
Exactly. But we were just talking about that whole thing about, building trust with somebody. I want someone when they come to my social world to get a sense of who I am, what I believe in, and what I stand for, but not in a way that I'm beating them over the head with it, whatever that is. And that they're getting a real sense of who I am. And sometimes it's hard because you feel like, well, I would feel like I'd be more genuine and honest if I revealed this. But then you go, no, this is the pressure of social media more than anything.
Right.
Did we already say that we grew up? We grew up without it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I was trying to remember what conversation that was. The young folks out there, this is all you know. Your life has always been this, and so your decision making is a lot different. You're looking at things from a different perspective, but it's always going to be out there. That's the thing you got to remember. Just because you delete it doesn't mean it's gone.
Right.
And just because you said something and you've deleted it doesn't mean people didn't see it and will remember it. It's just, I don't know. It's just become so diluted, and I don't know. I just think you have to be careful.
I think you do too.
And maybe you start out in that box where you just put a few things in there. Maybe if you've been doing this a while, you reanalyze and you say, all right, I'm just struggling with all of these things. Then just put 3 or 4 things in there that you say, these are things that I'm okay with sharing. And then the rest, not right now. Yeah. I'll reevaluate it. You can reevaluate your box of transparency.
I mean, that's what you did. You weren't sharing depression stories when you were depressed. But now that you're on the other side of it, you can look back and you have perspective.
Yes.
So that's how I feel comfortable too. Like there are topics I'm not necessarily talking about now, but I think at some point it might be important. I'll just throw one out there. Menopause.
Oh, let's not talk about that.
We're not going to talk about it. But
no, you're right though. That's
that
for sure.
Is something that when I was in the throes of it, you did not want to hear what I had to say about it or much of anything else. Let's be real and frank here. Yeah. But at some point, it would be something I would want to talk about, maybe not on an art podcast.
Right.
But I think it's something that, that and many other things, whether they're women issues and we're women. So it could be infertility. It could be menopause. It could be whatever.
Right.
Decisions that women have to make in their lives that I would absolutely be willing to talk about.
Yeah.
But maybe not here. This might not be the right place. Yeah. Though who knows? You might, episode 32, hot flashes suck. Who knows?
Yes.
What color are your hot flashes?
I like that. That's good.
Yeah. With perspective, maybe you add things into the box and say, hey, I'm ready to talk about this.
Yeah. And that's how it was for me. And the response was good. I had people reach out and say, I'm struggling with that. And, how did you deal with that? How can I use my art to, and so it was great because I was able to take an experience that at the time I did not want to share, didn't want to talk about, I wasn't ready. And then when I was, and it went into the box, it was, okay, how can I use that experience to help others and encourage and inspire them?
Right.
Yeah. That's how I had to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the exact same thing because both of us, we have purposes of helping others, of inspiration, uplifting, and sometimes sharing the hard times so that people can know that they're not alone.
Right.
Is a huge thing. And it comes time when you're ready to do that. And maybe it's a separate feed.
Maybe.
Red Hot Artists.
Ooh.
Yeah, something.
I don't know. That's good.
But I think this is an important topic that people need to decide before they get there.
Yeah. And if you're in doubt and you're not comfortable, then you just don't share it.
Yeah, that's your answer.
That just has to be. Yeah, absolutely. If you're unsure. And, we've talked about this before where we talk about sort of that 24-hour rule where you just kind of wait. Don't pick up the phone and grab, go into Twitter and start, ranting or Facebook or whatever. Just kind of give it some time.
Right.
Think back to your box, what you've written in your box and what you're comfortable with.
Right.
And you can still be authentic and real even if you leave things outside the box.
Absolutely. All right. Good talk.
Yeah.
Wow, it's kind of a serious one.
It was. Not as much laughing in this one.
True.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Creatives Get Real.
We love hearing from you. So hop on over to Instagram and leave us a comment. And we also appreciate reviews on iTunes.
And you can find me, Sandi Keene, at sandykeene.com and my classes at popupartclasses.com.
And you can find me, Roben-Marie Smith, at robenmarie.com. And if you're looking for and need tech support, check out my membership site, makerstechu.com.